You are listening to 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester, New York.
Extreme Independent Radio.
Worldwide, you can find us online at 1009wxir.com.
Infiltrate Radio.
All right, we are back, and in studio today we've got Kosi. Am I saying that correct, Kosi?
Kosi, yes.
Kosi, and she is a musician. And are you based out of New York City?
Yes, New York City.
All right, fantastic. And I had the opportunity to take a listen to some of your tunes here on your Facebook page. I'm digging what I'm hearing.
Okay.
You got some projects, and I see a bunch of shows coming up, right? Is there anything in particular that you got going on project-wise that you can fill us in on?
Well, project-wise, I have my fifth album project, which is called Stranger in Every Town. I just released the title track of that as a single this past July 20th.
Oh, excellent.
I've got another single that I'm releasing on August 24th. And then I'm going to release one more single in September, and then I'm going to release the entire album in November. I'm going to have an album release party in New York City on my birthday, because I like to lump things together like that.
Okay, excellent. And so the 24th, so by the time that airs, or by the time this airs, it'll be tomorrow when people are listening to this. So you'll have some new music from Kosi to hear sometime tomorrow. So that's great. So when did you get into when did you originally get into playing music? Do you write your own stuff, or is it?
I do write my own. I also like to do standards, but I haven't recorded very many standards. I've been singing pretty much most of my life. I was in the children's choir back when my parents used to drive me to church. I sang in the children's choir. You know, I sang in junior high. I sang in high school. I sang in college. I just recently, and by recently I mean 5 years, have been playing the guitar. So I've got very limited,
nice.
very limited guitar skills. But you know,
okay,
I to get around.
So, do you have a full band that you perform with? Is it like the same people every time, or do you perform, with kind of a different, you get a bunch of musicians together for a particular show or a project, or is it something that you always have the same kind of people you're working with?
For the most part, I tend to work with the same people all the time. Although actually for this last album, it was kind of an all new lineup, because the people that I was working with before, for various reasons, couldn't do it, and so it's kind of an all new lineup for this last album. But that's only true in New York City. When I leave New York City and go to other places, then obviously all bets are off, and I just tend to either play the guitar for myself, or I'll play with the musicians that I find available in the town that I'm in. I've got a band that I play with all the time in Chicago, but I'm not in Chicago as often as I'm in New York, obviously. And I've got an accompanist that I play with all the time in Hartford, Connecticut, but I'm not in Hartford, Connecticut as often as in New York.
Sure. So that must have been, were these people that you knew ahead of time, or is this something where like you had to kind of get them together as you had a show out there, and you kind of put the call out, hey, need someone to perform with me? Or how did that come together, like in all those different cities?
Well, in the various cities, well, I guess each one has a story. The guy I play with in Hartford, a gentleman named Sinan Booker, I'm going to be playing with him when I go to Hartford in September. I actually heard a friend of his play, I think, at an open mic, and I asked his friend if he'd be willing to accompany me, and the date that I had available, his friend couldn't do, and so he recommended Sinan, and then I've just been working with him ever since. And then I guess it's kind of a similar story. In Chicago, I just met a bunch of guys at an open mic in Chicago, and one of them ran a jam session in Hammond, Indiana. and was just like, hey, the next time you're in the Chicago area, you come and hang out with this band in Hammond, Indiana. So I've been doing that pretty much ever since as well. So I guess that's kind of how it happens. Is, you go there, you go to a jam session or open mic and meet people.
Yeah, no,
I,
I know the feeling very well. I mean, I'm a musician myself, so I've had some open mic sessions where I've ended up playing with a bunch of musicians too, just from the the open mics. We end up talking or having a drink at a particular table or whatever, and ended up getting together. Those are kind of the best relationships I find. Everyone's going up to do their own thing, and you're like, hey, maybe we should get together and do something. So the most recent project, the one that's coming out on the I'm sorry, so you're going to have something that's coming out after we're talking now, right? But before this episode actually airs on 100.9 WXIR Extreme Independent Radio. So that's. Am I correct in that? I don't know if I got those dates right. Right? There's one sooner than August 24th that's being released.
Well, the one sooner than August 24th has already been released, July 20th.
Gotcha. And what's the title of that one?
That's the title track. It's called "Stranger in Every Town." That's probably the one that you heard on Facebook because I posted a lyric video for that song on Facebook.
Yep. And I saw a live performance that you did too. I don't know where it was. I had it up here on my screen earlier, but
Ryan.
See if I can find it. Nah, I lost it. So have you always been musically inclined? I mean, is this something that you grew up with? I asked this question of a lot of musicians that come on the show because, like I said, I'm a musician and I grew up kind of my father playing music and my grandmother actually played the mandolin. So is it something that you grew up with?
Kind of. My parents were not. Aren't, and they're not dead. I don't know why I put it in past tense. My parents are not musicians, but I did grow up singing in church. And it's like, in church, everybody sings. You don't have to be a musician. They didn't, put me in the choir because they thought I could sing. They put me in the choir because they put me in the choir.
I gotcha.
And it was one of those choirs where, because, we were children, basically the person who got the solo was the person who volunteered for it. And so, the choir director would be like, okay, this song has a solo, who wants it? And of course, all of the more outspoken kids would be like, oh, me. And that was never me. Like, I never volunteered for the solo
right.
Because I was, I was never an outspoken kid. But as far as they were concerned, if you were enthusiastic about doing it, then, the job was yours. And then, I sang in junior high. I was part of the, I was part of the choir in junior high. I was part of the choir in high school. It's really interesting. I was just talking to my mother earlier, and she brought up the fact that we used to go to the library all the time, every Saturday. Me and my sister and my best friend and everybody, we would go to the library when we were little kids. And I would borrow cassettes from the library, and I borrowed every single Billie Holiday cassette that was in the library. At some point, I borrowed and brought home and and would play.
I'll be honest, I thought you were going to say you started singing in the library because of the acoustics in there. I was like, oh, how did that go?
Oh, that was a better story.
Right. So that's awesome. So they had Billie Holiday cassettes on available to take out. I remember doing that too back in the day, taking out CDs and cassettes and stuff from the library. I think they're starting to actually do that now online, where you can actually like stream it online through the library. I haven't actually checked that out, but someone was telling me because I do a lot of Audible and books on audio books and what have you, but I've been meaning to check that out. Speaking of the library, so you got into like Billie Holiday kind of early on in life?
Yeah, Ella Fitzgerald as well. I borrowed like every single Ella Fitzgerald cassette from the library as well.
Nice. And so I'm supposing at some point you started singing along with it. Was it I don't know how old you are, Kosi, I won't ask you, but when I was little, I used to have this little Sony like kids tape player or whatever, kind of like a boombox looking thing, but it was, it was real tiny. And I used to put my Michael Jackson tape in there and listen to Michael Jackson over and over and over again. Was this something like you would put on the headphones and be singing in the car and everyone would join in with you? Is it something like you and it sounded like your siblings were also kind of into? Would you guys be singing together or anything?
Not really. It was just me, and I wasn't polite enough to use headphones. I would just play. I would just play it loudly and just sing loudly. Okay. And that was the thing. Like, now that we're talking about it, I even remember, this was around the same time when I was in the Kosi choir. I would go in the playground and I would swing on the swing set, and I would just belt loudly because I guess for whatever reason I just assumed nobody could hear me, even though I was singing at the top of my lungs. And and yet I would get in the church and they'd be like, okay, so who wants the solo? And I never wanted it.
Yeah, that's
like, nope, not me.
That's interesting. So do you regret not taking the solo then? Like now, do you look back and be like, oh, why didn't I do that? Or is that something that
I think everything progresses the way it's the way it's meant to progress. I kind of feel like I still have a bit of that. I still have a bit of that energy when I'm on stage, because I kind of like, in certain instances, I'll forget that people are looking at me, or I'll like purposefully forget that people are looking at me, because if people are looking at me, then it becomes a different performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. I've been told that I close my eyes when I perform, and I don't remember doing that when I'm on stage, but apparently I do that. I tend to close my eyes when I'm performing. So, now the August 24th project. Now this is a single that's coming out, you said?
Yeah, it's a single, yes.
Okay.
A song called Closer.
I'm sorry? I didn't catch that.
I said the song is called Closer.
Closer. Okay. And is this a song that you wrote?
It is, yes.
And can I ask where what the inspiration behind the song was?
Well, I'll part ways tell you at least. The entire album, it's kind of a concept album, like my last one was, but I guess even more so than my last one was. All of the songs on the album were songs that were either written on tour or written about tour, or songs that I heard that were like just kind of like fit in the theme of being on tour. Because the way I tour is I tour by myself, which I don't know if that's weird to you, but to a lot of non-musician people that freaks them out. That it's like, wait, nobody, no band, no manager, no agent, nothing, not not a buddy or friend or anything. And so just like a lot of you get a lot of strange things that happen, but it's more just like about the spirit of just like being alone on the road. And the song "Stranger in Every Town," that's the one you've heard. That's more of a celebratory thing. The song "Closer" is more about like longing for connection, because it is very isolating to be on the road, and it's isolating in a very bizarre way, because unlike somebody who has a car where you're like actually isolated, like within the walls of your car, I take the bus. And so I'm not really isolated at any given moment, and I don't stay in hotel rooms. I stay on people's couches and, in people's spare rooms and on people's floors. And so there's always somebody around, but it's like this person is kind of also a stranger, you know what I mean?
So I like that. So just for those just tuning in here, we've got Kosi on the show here tonight on 100.9 WXIR Extreme Independent Radio, and we're talking about her tour life and how you kind of go, Kosi, on tour generally by yourself, and of course, just for those listening, there is always security around, right, Kosi? Around your way. just for those, security. So, but I find that interesting because I think that's the best way to kind of experience a life. Did you grow up in New York City?
Yes, born and raised.
Okay, so because I was born and raised in Queens, as a matter of fact, myself, Jackson Heights. So,
Wait.
so I
Well, I was
remember
born and raised in,
in
so I
where?
guess that's not really very Laurelton.
Okay, so
Where's that? Yeah.
I remember succinctly when I was a kid, especially in New York City, you're surrounded by people, but somehow you're kind of still alone because everyone kind of ignores you. You can walk down the street or you could be on the subway and you're just surrounded by people, and yet you are allowed to kind of be by yourself, if that makes sense, because no one really pays necessarily too much attention to what anyone else is doing, unless, of course, there's something crazy going on, right? But I remember taking the buses and things like that a lot, Greyhounds, and me personally, I really enjoy that experience. Some people are not a fan. Like, do you actually enjoy that feeling of going by yourself, being on the bus, like looking out the window, that sort of thing? I mean, I think that's a very specific personality type that enjoys that. And it sounds like you do, right? Like, what do you enjoy about that kind of touring?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's like I'm in a place in my life right now, which, wasn't always the case and could change at any point, but I'm in a place in my life right now where I don't really do anything I don't want to do. If I didn't like touring, I'd stop. So I don't have, a boss or a record label or anybody making me do this. I just do it because I want to. But there's a lot of things that I like about touring. One of the things I like to do is just to go to various different places and listen to people's accents and listen to, or rather watch people's way of doing things. And it's just like, oh, they do things differently here than they do where I'm from. Or, oh, they do things differently here they do from the last place where I was. And, I feel like whenever people ask me about my crazy stories about being on the road, they think that I'm going to tell them about, oh, well, there was just like creepy axe murder or whatever that I had to like grab on the left and get away from. But most of my like crazy stories are just like, oh, they just totally do things differently here than they do where I'm from. As I'm telling this story, the first thing that popped into my head was I recently spent the night, well, not recently, on my last tour. One of the nights I spent was at a trailer park a few miles outside of Detroit, so in kind of rural Michigan. And it was my first time ever seeing a trailer park, and I was like, oh, so this is a trailer park. So this is a trailer. This trailer is nicer than my apartment. This is completely different from the stereotypical image that I was fed about, what a trailer and a trailer park should be. And, it was one moment where I walked outside for whatever reason. I get something from the car or something like that. And I was walking back in and I looked up and just like every star in the constellation was like, it was just like it was a really clear night. It was just all of these stars. And I just looked up and I was just staring for a moment like, wow. And the person whose trailer I was staying in just kind of looked at me like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, you've got stars here. We don't have those in New York.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I think my wife told me that I did that when we first, because I moved up to Rochester now, and I'm living here, and it's a whole different, like, nighttime is a whole different world here versus living in the city, because there's so much light. They call it light pollution, that's just stopping you from being able to see stars at night. That when you come up anywhere outside of that, the bright lights of the city, it's impactful how much of the sky you can see, and it's amazing. So that's I appreciate that you have that same kind of was it insight or not insight, but you see that too. So these trailer parks, that's interesting to me. So you were staying actually inside of a trailer in this trailer park. Was it like one of those deluxe like tour bus looking trailers, or was it like what was?
It was. I couldn't. It looked like a little house. I couldn't see the wheels. And I asked the gentleman I was there. I was like, "Well, where are the wheels?" And he's like, "Oh, they're covered by a metal panel. And if I ever needed to go somewhere, I would just move the metal panel." And it just looked like a collection of little one-story houses.
So for those just tuning in here, we've got Kosi on 100.9 WXIR Extreme Independent Radio. Is this a person that you knew, or this was just was this again, like when you went touring, this is someone that you knew already? Because me personally, I would feel like a little concerned walking towards a trailer park and be like, oh, I'm going to stay in this random trailer if that's what happened. But I'm supposing you had some sort of prior experience with this person, right, before you stayed there?
Not really.
No?
I had met him once the previous year. I was in that town about the same time of year, and I had met him at a show. And then when I saw him again at this show, I didn't recognize him right away, but he recognized me. He was like, "Oh yeah, you were here last year and you played a show at such and such venue." And I was like, "You're right, I did."
Oh, that's pretty cool. So, as you go around from city to city, right? I'm guessing because this was, you said, just outside of Detroit.
Yeah.
The trailer park. So, like, what was the city that most kind of, I guess, surprised you? Do you have one that's like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that was, that was going on in the city? Because I've had that. I've gone to a number of places, and sometimes I get somewhere and I'm like, holy mackerel, like I didn't even realize that there was this much going on in a city. Is there one in particular that kind of like stands out?
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is Akron, Ohio.
I've never been there. I don't think I've ever been to Akron, Ohio.
It's a nice town. I was there once for a week. I had a week, well, not a full week. I had about 4 or 5 days that I didn't have a show, and so it was like, okay, well, what town am I going to spend these 4 or 5 days in? And so I went looking for a town that was, in between my shows, and that had a lot of open mics that I could go to. And Akron actually has multiple open mics every day, which I did not expect. New York City has multiple open mics every day, but New York City is New York City. There's a lot of other small towns you go to, and there's like maybe 4 open mics in the whole town and all day or something like that. But Akron had an open mic every day.
Wow.
And, it was kind of, it kind of surprised me just like how many music venues there were in Akron. I was just like, wow, this is, like, musically speaking, this town is popping.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that. Like Akron, Ohio, being a big music town, is there like a lot of food places too? Because what I tend to notice too is whenever there's a big music scene, there's usually a lot of really good food around too.
I mean, I guess what I remember about Akron is there was I think it was a Monday night that I went to this open mic that ended at midnight. And so afterwards, I was just like, okay, where are we going to go get some food? And they're like, nowhere at midnight. And I'm like, there's got to be some food around somewhere. And they're just like, well, we've got a Taco Bell that's open late. And that was literally the only thing open.
Right. So, Kosi, as you travel outside of New York City too, like New York City's a strange animal because things are open till like, 5 o'clock in the morning. You can get some stuff. But anywhere else you go, it's usually, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. Tops is how late most of these places are open, or like you said, a Taco Bell or one of those kind of places.
Pretty much.
I'm a big food guy, so I know all about that stuff. So the August 24th is when the single comes out, and is this the single? Is that the title track from the album that will potentially be out?
The title track from the album came out on July 20th.
So that's Stranger Every
Yeah,
Time.
Stranger
Okay. So you're
So this will
releasing them one by one, kind of.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I gotcha. So when do you plan to actually have? Is the full album already out, or are you planning on having the album released? After all the singles, is that the plan?
I'm gonna release the album on my birthday in November. I'm gonna have a birthday party in New York City, um, and release the album at the same time.
Okay.
But I do have copies of it. So if anybody comes to see me in Rochester, I'll have copies of it. But the album isn't officially released
Oh yeah,
until
that's right. You're going to be up in Rochester, as a matter of fact, right? What date is that going to
yeah.
be?
Um, oh wow, I don't know when I'm not looking at it, but
Let me see
I
if.
believe it. I believe it's the 12th, the 13th, and the 16th, or the 13th, the 14th, and the 16th, something like that.
Is
I'm
it
going to be at the Daily Refresher one day, Starry Nights Cafe one day, and Boulder Coffee one day.
excellent? I played at Boulder quite a bit, and as a matter of fact, the Daily Refresher. I don't think I've actually ever been there. It's a cool bar though. Oh, that's awesome. Let me see if I can find the dates. You said the. So I want to make sure
I think
people get those
13th
dates
and 15th. I think those are the dates
of September, right?
of September.
All right, excellent. So, when you come up, are you going to be performing like a full set, or any like unreleased songs that we get a taste of when you're up here, or what?
I'll be playing a bunch of unreleased songs. I usually do. Um, I also play covers because I'm a jazz musician, so I like covering things, putting my own spin on things. It's just part of what makes music fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll probably be playing some stuff from the album as well, but like the acoustic guitar version.
The covers that you do, what do you typically cover? Because if you're gonna just be playing acoustically with a guitar and your voice, I would imagine some of the jazz stuff might be a little bit difficult to do in that style. Like, do you have any songs in particular you can let us know what you?
Yeah, I can't play jazz on guitar. Like I haven't been playing long enough to. I have very very limited guitar skills,
Gotcha.
but I do at least what I think is a kind of interesting cover of Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison. Um,
Nice.
who I do. I do a couple of Abbey Lincoln songs. One of my albums, my third album, as a matter of fact, was just it was a tribute to Abbey Lincoln, just all Abbey Lincoln songs. So there's a couple of those that I can play on guitar. Um, I do. Oh, what else? I just recently learned how to play "What You Won't Do for Love," so that's a fun one. There's a Sam Smith cover that I do, kind of melts into a jazz version or something like that. Just like little like snippets of things. Oh, I do a cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. I
That's
recorded that years ago, actually. Hallelujah is on my fourth album that
that's
came out in 20.
such a great song. That song too. The Hallelujah. So when you come up, are you doing it acoustic by yourself, or do you have someone accompanying you up here?
I don't know anybody in Rochester,
You don't.
unless you.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a ton of musicians. So if anyone wants to seek out Kosi and be some accompaniment, there's the School of Music, Eastman School of Music up here. So there are a lot of musicians, a lot of competition up here too, as a matter of fact. So, but a lot of musicians and a lot of people that can just kind of pick up what you're playing and play along. So I'll put the word out there for you if you want some accompaniment that anyone wants to play, reach out to her and start talking. So
I'd certainly like to meet people in Rochester.
yeah, it's a great.
I don't know. It's a lot of fun to go to open mics, but I'm going to try to do as many as time allows.
Yeah, are you doing so the Boulder Coffee one? Are you doing the open mic there?
No, the open mic I believe is Wednesday, and I'm playing on Thursday.
So you're on Thursday, because the open mic there was one of my favorite places because it's a coffee shop, right? So it's a little bit small, and it is one of the few open mics kind of on a Wednesday, but it's super low key and it's fills up with musicians. So you get sometimes you go to an open mic and there are people in the audience and they're not all musicians. Some of them are there just to kind of hang out, eat, drink, etc. Right? So you kind of have to win over the audience. With Boulder Coffee, especially during that open mic, I like it a lot because it just fills up with all musicians. So everyone is paying attention to what's going on the stage because they're all performers. It was one of the most, I felt like the most supportive music open mics in town. I mean, you'd have like poets go up there, comedians go up and try and do their thing too. But I really dug Boulder's open mic in particular out of most of the ones in town. So I think you'll like Boulder Coffee if you've never played there before. I mean, I'm guessing it's the one on Alexander, right?
Yes.
Okay. So for those just tuning in here, we've got Kosi here, and she's going to be, again, Kosi, what are the dates in September?
I believe it's the 13th, the 14th, and the 16th. I'm not certain of those dates because I'm not looking at the calendar, but in that weekend, it's Thursday at Boulder, Friday at Starry Night, and Sunday at Daily Refresher.
Excellent. So you guys can actually see her in person performing on those dates. And we're going to get into a little bit of the some of these stories that you were talking about earlier during your tour life here in the podcast as we transition. But I want to thank you for being on the broadcast, and we're going to switch over to podcast mode here in a second. But for those just tuning in, we had Kosi on September 13th, 14th, and the 16th. She's going to be in Rochester performing. And we've got some music coming up for you guys. If you want to hear the rest of the interview, tune in to any of your favorite podcast mechanisms, as we like to call it here on the show, and just search for Infiltrate Radio Podcast. And Kosi, again, thank you for coming on, and I'll talk to you here in a second.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I usually just give it a little pause there before so I have a place to cut when I go to put it into the podcast. So now we can get down to the nitty gritty here, Kosi.
Okay.
Okay. So what we usually do on the show here every week is we drink something alcoholic, and we change it up every time. Sometimes I'll have food guests on the show too. Like we've had some hot sauce makers on the show. We've had some cider makers. We've drank whiskey with some food bloggers in town. And so tonight on this show, I'm actually drinking Bee Nectar. So they're a meadery in, where is this? Michigan. And I'm drinking some of their cider. One of them is called Zombie Killer. Have you ever had Bee Nectar cider before?
No, I don't think I have.
Do you drink alcohol at all?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I love mead.
So I would share some with you, but I don't think that's possible over Skype. So if you want to crack open something that you got there, you're welcome to do that. So I usually tell everyone what I'm drinking anyway during the show, and whatever the guest is drinking. So it's delicious. They've got ciders, they've got meads, so like honey wines for people that don't know what a mead is, and these are ciders that are spiked with like cherry and all sorts of stuff, and they kind of name their ciders after like movies. So like Zombie Killers, what's that zombie TV show that's out? The Walking Dead? The Walking Dead, right? And they have a cider called the Dude's Rug from The Big Lebowski. So they've got like a bowling ball on the cover and all that kind of stuff. So, so I know you started talking earlier kind of about some of these stories. Have you had any bad experiences as you're going out?
Oh, a couple.
A couple? Do you care to talk about those, or do you not want to even get into the bad experiences?
Well, I guess I'll keep it kind of light. Interesting that you started talking about zombies. 'Cause I met a guy in Cleveland who had vampire teeth, because of course he did. And it was mostly cool. He was a little bit younger than me. He was hitting on me. I was not that interested. But it's like it gets to a point where it's just like you're trying to get away from somebody, and then, at the moment where it's just like, well, this would be a good time to slap him and run, but wait, I've got too much luggage. Can't do that.
Huh.
So that was kind of, that was kind of the situation.
I would assume they're fake vampire teeth of some sort, right? But were they like implanted vampire teeth, or were they like the fake, like dollar store glow in the dark vampire teeth that he had?
It looked like he had gotten some work done on his teeth to make them look like vampire teeth.
Yeah, then you definitely know there's you gotta get away from that person once there's dental work involved, because people avoid the dentist for like stuff they need to get done. When you start going in to get teeth inserted and pulled and all that stuff, there's definitely, you got something going on. So besides music, like what else do you got going on in life? Do you have anything you'd like to talk about that you got going on, projects? I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. I do music. I do, obviously this radio show and podcast and whatever. And I've got all sorts of projects going on. Do you do anything besides music?
That's a really good question. I'm sure I must sometimes do something other than music. At this moment, I can't. I can't think about it.
Pretty much your priority, though. That's a good thing to have focus like that on a particular a particular creative endeavor, because sometimes, especially artists, I feel, can get sidetracked by having a million things going on, and you get a million projects happening, and you never actually finish one of those projects, which I have fallen into that trap in the past too. I've had stuff going on, and I start something, and then I'm like, I can't really even finish that, or I get bored with it or whatever. So it's good to have focus, obviously, on what you're doing. Is this something that you really want to do? Is this something you do, one, as your main money source? Because it's difficult right now to be a musician and make enough money to survive on, let alone in New York City, because I personally know how expensive it is to live there. So if it's not, is that something that eventually is the goal, or is it just kind of music, you have to do it regardless of whether or not you're making money at it?
Well, to answer the last question, I'm not making really any money, but then again, neither is anybody else. As far as, I do have, another part-time job, but I guess it's kind of just like a way of looking at things, because I kind of feel like when you ask me, what do I do other than music? Well, I do a whole lot of other things that have nothing to do with music, but that I only do in order to support music. Like, if you asked me, like, what's the last thing that I was working on? The last thing I was working on was a video, which doesn't necessarily have to do with music, except that, yes, it does. It's a music video. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so is that something you're, like, producing for someone else, or is this your own music video, or is this...
It's my music video for the, for a few of the tracks that are coming out with this album. I decided, for the first track that I put out, I did a lyric video. And then for the next two, I'm doing more like artsy music video type music video. And it's interesting because like working on those videos is not the same as working on music. Like I don't actually have to, pick up an instrument or anything like that, but it's all kind of part of the same project. Or even, even if I'm working on my part-time job, it's like for the most part, I'm making money to then spend on this, on this other project.
So, So are you producing the music video yourself, or is it you've got a friend or someone that's producing the video for you, and then you're coming up with the ideas? Like what kind of where are you in in the process of making the video, because I do a little film stuff too, and I find it very similar to like making music, especially editing, like matching the video in certain ways to the audio that's along with it, especially when it's a music video. There's an art to it. There's a if you don't layer it properly, you don't have things coming in at the right moment during the audio, like it doesn't flow. It's kind of like putting together a song. So do you do any of the editing yourself or any of that stuff, or do you have someone that you partner with to do that?
A bit of half and half. I've been working with a videographer, a gentleman named Daryl, who's actually done the footage. He's the director of photography for most of my videos at this point. But he doesn't always do the editing. Sometimes he does the editing. I'm working on 2 videos at the same time right now, and he shot both of them. And one of them, he liked the footage and the content so much that he decided to take it on as his own personal project. So it's kind of like he's working on one, but I'm working on the other one. Although he shot both of them. And the original plan was for me to edit both, but he just decided to take this one over, and I was just like, yeah, sure, okay. I've seen his short films and and other work that he's done with other partners and on other projects, and I was just like, okay, yeah, sure, that's one fewer thing for me to do before leaving town. So.
It's a really interesting art form too, just the music video process itself. So you said you're doing kind of something like more artful, right, with the actual video. So it's not, is it you just performing and kind of a video like that, which I would suppose from your description probably has some more to it, or is it something where there's a bit of a like a little short film kind of going on during the video?
Well, what's interesting is that there are 2. My last set of videos I did a couple years ago with my last album. I did kind of like a Kanye West style short film, but broken up into 5 videos. And so there was a plot line and story, like it went through. There was a logic to it and everything. Now it's like there are 2 different videos. One of them is much more performance oriented, and the other one is just more, I guess, image oriented, for lack of a better word. I don't know if I should go ahead and describe it to you, or
that's up to you. I don't know if you want to keep it a secret or not. Like, up to you whether or not you want to share it. I'd be interested in hearing, but balls in your court, Kosi.
Well, the one for Close, that's the one that's going to come out. I guess this podcast airs on the 23rd. It's coming out tomorrow. That one, the concept was that it was kind of just like an artsy, like a fashion shoot type thing, but without a whole lot of focus on fashion, because that would cost more money than I could put into a video. But one of the features of it is that it's me and another model, a male model, who is nude for the entire video. And so it's me and this incredibly, buff, muscular naked man.
Right. I can 100% relate to that. It's me too. No, it's definitely not me. No, I got you. So during the music video, I'm guessing, is this the male guy, is he dancing, or is it more of like I guess we could probably wait and see, right? Tease it a little bit. But so I know the story is closer, right? So is there a little bit of, like, I'm guessing, sensuality being dropped in there, right, between you and the individual or the model, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very sexually charged song and video. It's like really really sexually charged in a way that I don't usually do. I haven't put out any videos so far that were like I've had videos that were based on like the story of a relationship, but nothing that was just like you know just pure like
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's tough, especially for an independent musician to do something like that, especially if you're doing other things, for money. If you've got like the day job and things like that, to really put yourself out, I think as an artist, it is difficult if you're not. If the bills aren't necessarily 100% being paid by the music, and I've felt that myself, where you kind of want to go to a place, where you don't have to necessarily think about the consequences of the art that you want to put out, right? But unfortunately, because music is where it is right now and the music business is where it is, sometimes you actually have to think about that, and I think that's putting some restraint on artists that would otherwise be really, you know, I don't know. There would be better art put out by some of the artists that are out there, I guess I could say, without those restraints. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but or maybe they're just artists.
I feel like the financial restraint is probably greater than the societal restraint, at least for me. Um, because like I said earlier, I'm at least right now, and it wasn't always the case, and it may not necessarily always be the case, but I'm at least right now in a place where, for the most part, I do what I want. Um, but obviously within the guidelines of what I can afford, which is
Sure.
not much. And even like on the shoot, there were moments where it was just like, oh, what would be really nice here? A fog machine.
Right.
But we don't have a fog machine.
Right. Nor the money to just go out and buy one for this one time thing that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, little things like, or even just like the idea of, it's just like, oh, it would have been really perfect if I had, say, painted my nails. I did not, but I don't have, the money to come back and do another shoot. So whatever I didn't do is just not going to be, because we're not going to do this again. Or like even in the studio, like my first recording session for this upcoming album was a 10-hour session. And there was just certain stuff that it's just like, well, if it doesn't get done today, it's not getting done.
Right.
Because I'm not to this particular, because it was, the more expensive studio, the drum kit, and there was there was a live piano, or grand piano and everything. It was a great studio, and I was really glad that I got it. But it got to a point where it's just like, well, this is what it is. And there were certain tracks that, like, later after the fact, when I was in smaller studios, like, if I had money, I'd do this over. But
I know that all too well. I mean, I've put together bands and for albums, and when you go into the recording studio, you don't necessarily know the recording etiquette of some of the other musicians too, and so I've gone in with musicians and had the bass player take 5 or 6 hours to just get his bass sound, or an hour to tune up. Like, I've had a stand-up bass player, and just took forever to get the bass tune. He was never happy with how, where it was tuned, which is great if you have nothing but time and money to spend in the studio. But I was, like you, I would fund most of my own projects. So I can very closely relate to some of those things. And then after the fact, you think, if that guy didn't spend that 4 hours trying to tune his bass up, I would have had that 4 hours to really get this part that I really wanted to be in the song better. And it would have been I would have been happier with the project. But here's something else, Kosi. I think that even musicians that have all the money and have professional, studios at their disposal 24/7, I hear interviews all the time from them, and they say, after it gets released, they can't listen to it for like years after, the recording, because all they hear is the mistakes that they made, what they didn't like about it. You know what I'm saying? So there's a
you have to already have money to have that luxury.
and that's
Because even just like this process of just for example recording this video, I had to listen to that song on loop for about 2 hours.
right.
And so it's like, well, if you don't like the song, then when are you gonna?
Right.
You better learn to like it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So the other thing that's funny too. So who's the painter that painted the Campbell soup? Andy. Is it Andy Warhol? There's a good quote. Every time I'm doing a project and I'm like, I don't have the time to really do what I want, or I'm not happy with it after I release it. I think he said something like, you make art and let everyone else decide whether or not it's good or not. You just keep making art, right? And it's inspired my my recording career and what I've done when I go out and I make something like a radio show or I do a video project or whatever. I'm almost never happy after the product is finished. People say, oh, this is fantastic, whatever. But I'm never really 100%, satisfied with it, because you're kind of your own worst critic. Let everyone else decide whether or not it's good or not. You just keep making it and then move on to the next one, so you don't over criticize your last project and decide to stop doing it altogether. I think people get discouraged by that.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
So I'm really glad you came on the show. I'm gonna have to come out to one of these shows here in September. So it's the 13th is a what here? This is I want to see the dates of the.
Those are
Thursday, Friday, and
Thursday.
So I'm gonna have to come out to see you. Maybe I'll come out to the Boulder show. I'll see if I can come out to that one.
Well, I'd love.
So one of the other things, so I also have a day job as well. I do the radio show, I do my music. So I think that's become kind of the norm in any of the arts, where you have your day job going on. What do you do as for your day job, if you don't mind me asking that? Is that something that you want to?
Well, I do mystery shopping.
Mystery shopping, you said?
Yeah, which is kind of a thing that when I say it, people think it doesn't exist, but it does.
What is mystery shopping?
It's customer service evaluation. I get an assignment, and I go to whatever establishment, whether it be a store or, and I have to either ask questions like I'm going to buy something, or in some cases I have to actually buy something, in which case I'll be reimbursed most likely. And then I have to answer questions about the customer service I received. And the thing about that is that it's by assignment. So when I'm really, really strapped for cash, or when I'm doing a project like this, where it's just like, well, I'm going to need a whole bunch of money, then I just sign up for a whole bunch of assignments. And then when I don't feel like doing it anymore, I just stop.
You just lay off. Huh. Well, I think that's actually...
They find you what you sign up for.
So you're kind of like undercover. You're like an undercover agent for some of the... That's kind of cool. How did you end up getting that gig? That's kind of a cool gig to have as like a day job. Can I be envious of your day job as well, Kosi? Is that because I kind of like that, because you kind of got to go in, you're shopping and you're judging everything that's going on, right? Because you got to report back on it.
I mean, you're certainly permitted to. I wouldn't be envious. It works like anything else.
Yeah. How did you end up getting into that?
I've actually been doing it on and off for maybe 11 years. And I got into it at such a time as I was just kind of like, I was just like, kind of like going through like every scammy internet thing, you know, and as it turns out, it's like, no, this is not a scam, it's a real job, which is why I'm still doing it,
Right,
you know,
right.
11 years later. But it was one of those things that was like, you know, it was one of those spam things that was sent to my inbox with like, hey, would you like to make money on the side? And I was like, I sure would.
See, so every spam email that anyone gets now, they're going to start replying to like, oh, maybe Kosi said it was good. I'm going to go ahead and reply and see if this changes my life. No, but that's pretty cool.
People make the decisions that I've made.
Right.
Like I actually have a best friend who, you know, I'm not going to get into the details of the situation, but it was the first time in the, I don't know what, 20 years that we've known each other that he was coming to me for advice, because it's usually the other way around. It's usually me going to him for advice and him telling me what the practical thing to do is, and then me going, you know, I'm not going to do that, and ignoring his advice. And so he came to me with a similar situation, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to tell you. What you're describing is exactly what I would do. And he's just like, oh, you're right. I really, really shouldn't. I really shouldn't. Wow. Thank you for that, Kosi.
I think that job is an awesome job. I'd love to actually do that.
And it's helpful for, you know, for touring as well, because you're allowed to take assignments anywhere in the country. And so if I have like this tour, I probably won't, because this tour is going to be very show heavy. I just got like almost every day booked up with shows. But if I have like a few days in a city where I don't have any shows, I can sign up for assignments in that city for those days.
Oh, that's
and then,
really that. Oh, see, this is why I find this interesting, because that's the perfect job for someone that's a musician that's willing to do what you got to do. So one of the I work for an internet provider. I'll leave it at that. As my day job, that allows me to travel around New York City and go to, you know, all around the United States. They have business around the United States, so it allows me to travel. So every time I travel, I actually use that as an opportunity to also, you know, make music wherever I'm at. So it's funny that you're doing something like this too, that gives you that flexibility to actually do what you want. Because most people think, oh, I don't have the money to go on tour and do this or that. But you found something that allows you to actually do that, even if the gig itself isn't necessarily paying the bills per se, because just in general, you're not gonna. Music is tough to make music and then make money from that music, that then allows you to actually travel and so forth, especially when you're coming up right now. I
feel like I got very lucky with that job.
It is. It sounds well. I don't think it's luck. I think you responded to something that was put out there that probably most people wouldn't have. You know, most people would have just deleted the email or whatever it is that you ended up responding to and saying, oh, this is probably a scam, and didn't go for it. And now you're the one doing it versus them. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So we're coming up on an hour here, Kosi. So I guess we can wrap this up a little bit with anything else you want to promote. I know we've got your single coming out August 24th. I'm guessing you have a website.
Yes. KOSI-SINGS. Kosi-Sings. It's a sentence with a dash where a space goes. Kosi-Sings.com.
So that's KOSI-SINGS.com. And they can find, I'm guessing, every place you're going to be performing at, your music, etc. on there, right?
Yeah, I'm on an actual. This is actually the longest tour I've ever booked for myself. It's about 7 weeks long.
Wow.
I'm leaving home on the 23rd, which I guess that's today, and and I'm getting back home on, I think, the 7th or 8th of October.
Wow.
I mean, I am a couple of times, like, I'm going to be home for one day on the 9th, and I'm going to be home for about 4 days on like the 27th, 28th, something like that. But for the most part, it's a 7-week tour with just a couple of breaks in it. That's the longest tour for myself. So we're going to see how this goes.
Well, that's excellent. So this is the longest tour you've done, and I wish you nothing but luck. I know you can't say good luck, right, to anyone performing. So break a leg throughout the tour, right? But don't really do that. But you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to get at here, Kosi. So and I'm going to try and make it out to your shows here in Rochester on the 13th, 14th, and 16th. Anyone looking for Kosi, again, worldwide, we've got some people in the UK and in I believe Sweden that download the podcast too. KOSI-SINGS.com, Kosi-sings.com for all of our music and tour info, etc. Kosi, I really appreciate you coming on the show and reaching out to me to be on the show. I'm going to do my best to be at one of the shows. I'm thinking probably Boulder, just because I like Boulder so much. And, we'll have to have you on the show again. Maybe we can do it in person at some point in the future, too. Again, I can't say nothing but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so
you are listening to 100.9 FM
we'll
WXIR in Rochester, New York.
Extreme Independent Radio.
Worldwide, you can find us online at 1009wxir.com.
Infiltrate Radio.